I have number.
All right. So those are some of the, yeah, these are some of the resources that I've worked on, which are books. But let's talk about any of these that you might be interested in. And then obviously you guys tell me some of the books and other resources that you've explored or you're interested in. Yeah, so I don't know if are you guys familiar with any of these books? I mean, Chess for Dummies is very basic, but yeah, the Dummies or Idiots guides I think are really good. So this was yeah, I mean, it's just a really comprehensive book. I mean, I remember learning about like the French defense and stuff. I learned about all the basic tactics, checkmating patterns. So I mean, you could be a pretty good chess player. I mean, you guys are all beyond that. Chess for Dummies, John has it.
Yep.
Nice. How is it how's that gone for you, John? Did you read
That
that
was
a while ago?
yeah, that was my first book also. Yeah, I read the whole
Oh,
thing.
no way. Right.
Yeah.
Did we talk about it or you just happened to get it yourself?
No, I was reading your list here and I went, oh yeah, I read that. That was my first book I read.
Oh, that's funny. Hey,
Um,
yeah, no, that's it. I know. I feel like I was pretty lucky in terms of the way it worked out. In terms of the first books I read. I mean, you'll figure it out one way or another, right? It'll you cover. I mean, there's so much chess literature. You just kind of have to pour through it and just you have to devour it. But again, yeah, this is classic in terms of classic chess literature. Well, did I even mention my system? I don't think I even met. Well, that wasn't really hugely influential for me, my system, but that's a big one. So, but for me, it was more of the quote modern classic. I should have mentioned that. How to reassess your chess. I think that I've heard that's viewed as like a modern classic. Uh, so yeah, Chess for Dummies is good to start, but I felt lucky in terms of reading these two books among the first, and we have that right there. Alejandro, you got you
oh, yeah.
you guys have your books ready. You got your
Yeah.
libraries here, but my system, and then Alejandro, you have How to Reassess Your Chess. That's fourth edition.
Yeah, it's the fourth edition.
I have the third edition. I don't know. Well, the fourth edition's longer. It's the third. Well, I don't know. I don't know what he did to it, but I like the format of the third. I like how I don't even think he has some of the same chapters. Like there's a chapter in the third on like it kind of exploiting multiple imbalances. So the interplay between it, which is really important because it's one thing to talk about the imbalances or difference in the position in isolation. First, you have to know that, but then we get to the real stuff,
Hmm.
like bringing it to real life or in the real 64 squares, which is how do these things all interact? Which one? First, we have to realize they're all there. Which one takes precedence in any given moment? Can we transition from having an exchange up to coughing that up and then having a pawn up or giving up a pawn for our initiative but then being willing to trade one thing for the next, right? Or I have an attack on your king. Well, now I'm willing to stop the attack, give up that, but now I enter a pawn up or a better end game. You know what I mean? Because like, okay, fine, I'm not going to mate you right now, but I can get a better end game and hopefully win the end game using my technique, which I learned from Endgame Challenge or modern endgame practice. So it's that flexibility. But anyway, I was going on a tangent, but there's a good chapter about that. I think there's one more chapter. Oh, there's another chapter I think that covers imbalances throughout the game. So basically, we can look at how you create imbalances in the opening, such as Nimzo Indians, the classic example. Bishop b4, you take the knight on c3, and then you double their pawns and you give up a bishop for knight. So we're working with pawn structure throughout. Pawns the soul of chess, right? So a lot of it's just how you handle pawn structure. So you read that book, you'll really understand a lot about pawn structure and their interplay with pieces. But anyway, you're creating that imbalance. So you're like, look, I'm gonna shut down your bishops and I'm gonna maybe exploit your weaker pawn structure, or at least use that pawn structure to create rigidity in your position, which is precisely what Fischer did in round 5 versus Spassky, and he shares that. So that's just an example I love. But I think he uses that one. Well, it goes throughout the game until Spassky just collapses on, yeah, he's entering an end game. It's like it's queen knight. Is it? It's queen knight bishop, I think. I think it's like queen knight bishop, yeah, versus queen and two bishops. But Spassky's bishops were terrible. So anyway, but yeah, that's a good example from opening into what was like a very tactical end game, kind of early end game. You have queens in a couple pieces, kind of transitional phase. But anyway, yeah, carrying throughout the game, that's super important. And then the other ones are, art of attack and chess, more focused on other topics. But this is just like overall strong chess play. But again, my system also great for middle game play. That's a classic. Oh, there's my system. So yeah, tell me what you guys think about some of those, and just in terms of middle game books. So we're getting into Chess for Dummies. I mean, I'm going beyond that to How to Reassess Your Chess, and then there's the companion workbook. Then we've got My System by Nimzovich. What was that? 1930s, 20s, or 30s? I think it was written in the 1930s the first time, right? First edition. And then we also have Yusupov's, and Leah, you mentioned Yusupov's series. So we can also look at that. Although I think we lost. No, wait, where are you, Leia? Are you there? Let me open it. Let me make it bigger. But Leia, and I know you've mentioned use about, I think it's a 9-book series. I don't know if you have to read the whole series or not, but I think those are some interesting things to talk about. Just those 3 resources, Silman, and Yusupov and Nimzovich. So Nimzovich is obviously, that's a classic, which I didn't mention here, but there's also Chess Praxis, I think it's called, and he covers a lot of similar ideas. I've read probably Chess Praxis more than my system, but you get his ideas either way, you'll absorb them. So, and then you have other books like So for example, if you look at a best games of chess book, there you go again. Nice job, nice collection, Jordan. I think I have a green one that has like 3 in 1. I think it's 3 right, three editions in one. And there's Chess Praxis. Wow, nice job, guys. But yeah, so these ones will cover middle game topics, but in a less systematic way, right? So, or like this, Art of Positional Play. He covers positional chess, but he mostly shows himself defeating the King's Indian with white. That's kind of he's showing off his King's Indian, how the King's Indian is not as good as you might think. It's kind of funny how a lot of his games are literally that King's Indian on the white side. But anyway, so those are gonna be less systematic, but definitely these books, Silman's and Nimzovich's and Yusupov's are kind of like the things where people say, hey, you want to get better in the middle game? Here's a systematic approach that you can take. So what do you guys think about those? And why don't I'll make a whiteboard thing. I don't use those. Usually I'll just jot it on the side somewhere, but I'll try to make a whiteboard. So what do you guys think about some of those books or any other important middle game books?
I just wanted to speak the positives of this Alekin book. That you mentioned, it's not systematic, but I feel like one thing that kind of separates it from other books is he's a really like engaging annotator and writer. So I mean, like reading chess books can kind of be boring, like particularly if like your choice is like to play a game on chess.com or read a chess book. It's more fun to play on chess.com, but he writes in like a really engaging way. So it might not be systematic, like, oh, let's look at this. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to this tournament. These are the grandmasters. This is what I'm thinking about and what I'm worried about. This guy is going to do in this position. And this is, my thinking behind the moves. So that's why I like this.
Yeah, Alekine's book.
What's the title?
You said Alekine's, right?
Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
And
number 7 on his
can you guys see this here?
Yeah, the whiteboard, yes.
Yeah, I've never used it before. Wait, it says share. Let me see. Oh, that's if you want to share it elsewhere. Yeah, I think this should be showing up in the video then. So Alekine, okay. So you like that a lot because it's just, and again, what's your argument for the book, Jordan? That you see it kind of more like in,
I think
kind of more like real life scenarios. It doesn't have to be like, let me organize it perfectly. It's the message of like, we don't know what, like I said, about the interacting imbalances.
It's really twofold. One is that he's an engaging annotator, right? So it's not like a boring read. It's not like, oh, I have to like study chess to improve. It's kind of an enjoyable experience. And then I think 2 is like if you're gonna like annotate your own games, which is like a step to improvement. Like he is of the kind of GMs, he's one of the very best. So it's like, okay, what should I be writing down after my games? And what shouldn't I?
Yeah, exactly. Like if I say to someone here, analyze your game for me. I mean, pretty much I say, okay, analyze your game. Like, what do you mean? Okay, show me what you did well, right? What you did well, what you could have done better. I mean, a lot of that's about what, you're, especially when you're analyzing a game, you're trying to get at the truth of what happened, what happened or what could have happened. So chess players love to do parenthetic, a lot of parentheses, right? Because this is like, or sidelines, right? Those in parentheses, like, oh, this could have happened. And some people say, oh, don't show me all the sidelines. And that does get more advanced, but the whole point of the sidelines is we're trying to say, what's the best move? What's the best move / the best line, best ideas, right? So one is where it's kind of like reinforcing what you did well and realizing, or what you didn't do well and what could have happened, which can be used in the future in that specific line of opening, or just in similar, situations if similar patterns come up. So that's kind of the main thing. But just write your thoughts about the game, I'd say, to someone, essentially, like those types of things. But if you actually look at a great annotator, like, so we say notation is writing the moves down, annotation is the commentary, right? So a great annotator of his games like Alekhine, I mean, effectively, he's like journaling, effectively. It's like a journal about your games. But yeah, you could do it however you like, but it's good to see someone like him who's a master at that, as well as a masterful player. Because usually, right? Some of the top masters are not always great. Maybe they just don't want to divulge their methods, right? But I mean, you figure, hey, for posterity, you've been playing for decades, and it's like, just share your share with us how you're thinking. But not everyone can do that, to articulate that, so eloquently. So he's one of the few, and that's why also Bronstein's book. Did I write it there? Because Bronstein was not a world champion, but he was pretty close to it, and he describes the Zurich. Was it Zurich 1950? What? 54 or something?
54, I think it was.
Yeah, and he explained. I mean, so these are some of the top players in the world that were there playing this tournament, and he got the they turned in their score sheets, and so I think he got like immediate access to them. Yeah, great analysis by him as well. Okay, so we have that. So the Alekhine, but yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that, because again, even though it's not systematic, there's great stuff there. Okay, any others that did you guys have any thoughts on? So we have Silman. I can't really fit everything there. So we had Silman. We talked about Nimzovich. I have some people like, what do you do with a V or a W? I just do a V because it sounds like it's a V. In English, it makes sense to do a V, but I guess you can say it. Some people say it should be a W or something.
And David, I got Casablanca's book, and I really enjoyed that one. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
Which one? His best endings?
Let me see which one it was. I'm trying to remember which. I think it was the Chess Fundamentals.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the greatest players in chess history, and I like him because I often talk about how lucid he was in his play, like just very smooth, nothing too difficult to understand in a sense. Like I view it like he can almost tell you, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and he would do it very cleanly.
That's how the
right?
book. That's how the book was.
The book is like that too.
Yeah.
What's it called? Chess Fundamentals, you said?
Yeah, Chess Fundamentals.
Interesting. Okay, I guess I'm going to clear the board a little because it's getting too crowded on there. But fundamentals. Okay, so I'll just make a little list on the side, or maybe I'm going to do text, I guess. But yeah, so okay, so that looks good. What do you like, and what do you like about that? You said it's just easy to understand. Like, what does he cover in that?
He covers some of his games, but he just says, like, if I remember correctly, like why he does certain things, and it's not to really go down a whole bunch of crazy lines, but it's just like solid play that the intermediate and early chess player can kind of understand.
Okay, nice. Have you guys read that before?
One of the points that you just made, I think for me, is the key point in trying to evaluate or trying to search for resources. You just said about Capablanca that he presents things in a simple and a straightforward manner. Now, for example, one of the things which at least from the browsing that I did, I had the opposite impression. That guy Soltis, that you have on your list, David.
Oh, Soltis.
Yeah. I a lot of times what I do, I sort of cheat. I'll borrow something from the library, glance at it, see if it really catches my interest, see if I think that it's going to be useful, and if not, then I say, okay, well, I didn't have to buy a book or a Kindle edition. I looked at it and I, just felt that it was, probably the easiest way to say it is beyond my level at this point in time. Let's put it like that. So to my way of thinking, one of the most important issues, and I'm sorry, who was the one that was just speaking about Capablanca? I'm not seeing all.
That's Alejandro.
Alejandro. Yeah, I think that point that you made as far as the approachability of the ideas that he's trying to get across, to me, that is one of the key elements that I'm looking for in any resource that I'm trying to use. And I'm really, I've heard now, it's been a while since I glanced at the Nimzovich. I've heard that that's not the most approachable, although some of the stuff in his beginning and his introductions, he's got a sense of humor. There's no question about that. But in terms of, I'm wondering, and anybody that mentions a resource, at least to me, I think it'd be helpful if you also spoke in terms of how approachable the resource is, in terms of the ideas that the person is trying to get across, and also, what level you think it's useful for. Is it useful for grandmasters and international masters, or is it useful for people who are wood pushers, so to speak, potsers?
Right. So we had, yeah, keeping that in through that, looking through that lens, like who is it useful for? So as for Soltis, since you mentioned him, that's interesting because I have liked his stuff a lot. He might be a little more, I don't know. I think he's a great writer. I have actually gained a lot from some of his works. He has another book. I think it's called the Inner Game of Chess, which is, I guess I'd view it as like a modern attempt at how to think like a grandmaster. That's a classic. I'm not sure, but I'll have to open that one up so you guys can all see this easily here. Bouncing around there. You guys see that? Yeah, so I guess it'll show up. Okay. So yeah, we'll see how much I can fit on there. Writing with my in script, it was too big, but we'll try to cover it on here. Some of the works and some of the main thoughts. But yeah, so I think I mentioned Kotov's How to Think Like a Grandmaster in the list of stuff that I have read. Have you guys ever read that? But that's like how to calculate, basically. One way you can do it, but pretty useful. And then Soltis tries to cover that effectively. But yeah, no, I've gained a lot from his works though. And then, I mean, he does have stuff specifically. Well, he had the Soltis variation of the dragon. I think I've read something of his on that. I actually have a book of his on the bird, which is super good. I mean, it's from like 1970s theory, but it's not like the bird, like 1F4. It's not like bird theory has advanced that much since the 70s because it's just not very popular. But the basic idea is, and I've outplayed a lot of people using the bird because it's an uncompromising opening and has clear ideas. So then we can get into opening books, but of course there's so many opening resources. We don't even have to get into that right now. That's another thing. Then we'll talk about what you think in general is a good way. Like, do you think using an online resource is good for that or something like that? So what else what do you guys think about Silman, or what do you think about Soltis or Silman?
Yeah, I haven't read any of his books, so.
Someone's book is probably a little bit more intermediate. But it was definitely helpful to me, especially with those concepts, because he breaks down important games with them, about certain key points and the fundamental idea behind them. And it's kind of fun to actually play along on a board and try to figure it out yourself. But that one's pretty useful for just advancing beyond, like when you're above 1,000 and just trying to figure out bigger concepts. That's definitely for it.
Oh, sorry, I had to say something. Which one are you referring to, Alejandro?
Oh, how to reassess your chest? That's someone. Or am I thinking?
And you think it's you think it's useful. And so, sorry, I just missed it. Insofar as you can trying out the ideas you said.
Yeah, because he has those chapters, and it's good for the growing intermediate player for sure.
Yeah, and then his end game book is like supposed to be targeted to, oh, this is for 12 to 14, like B, D class, C class, or whatever. So C class is, what is it, 12 to 1400 or something? Or is that 14 to 16 is C, 16 to 18 is B, 18 to 2000s A, 2000 to 2200 expert, 22 beyond is master levels, right? So he tries to target it like that. I mean, obviously that's very, very rough way of doing it, but yeah, but definitely for an intermediate player, yeah, we can gain a lot from that.
No, I think, excuse me for interrupting you, Dave, but I think that is perhaps the most useful feature of that book. The very fact that he looks at end games, and as you explained, he divides his instruction of the end games each section is geared towards a specific level. And he tells you in the introduction, don't go ahead and jump to level C. Don't jump to level 1400 to 1600 if you have not completely mastered, under 1,000 or 1,000 to 1,200. And I just think that's a very, very useful approach. I have to get a little bit more disciplined in going through it step by step. But that I thought was, one of the most approachable and useful ways of actually presenting chess knowledge.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, he really was just an amazing author, brilliant at it. I mean, I think he had written tons of books. I don't recall how many. So he passed away last year, right? And yes, now we refer to him in the past tense. But yeah, he became during his life, he became super popular. And but yeah, I know he's into some, Eastern, like the Japanese films and stuff like that. A lot of interest. But yeah, I don't recall how many he's written. I think he's written quite a bit, but especially How to Reassess Your Chess. We have the main version, then there's the 4th edition, there's the workbook, there's his Endgames course. I don't know, those are the main ones. Oh, then there's the Amateur's Mind. I don't know who said that, who has read the Amateur's Mind? And that one's supposed to be really good. How was that one, Leah?
It's basically it's like an abridged version of How to Reassess Your Chess. So if it might be, for some people, it might be easier to read because it's a lot shorter.
But the format, from what I recall, I've just glanced at it. I just kind of flipped through the pages. Amateur's Mind is the format's different in terms of like at least some of the things I saw were like coach student discussions. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
What do you think on that?
Yeah, I think that's the intent of that, is to, I guess, expose erroneous thought patterns that can arise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And that's kind of, how I like to do with my students, just have a conversation and the ideas will come up and you'll see the thought, I can talk about my thought pattern, my thought process, as well as you guys. So that's really important because ultimately you're trying to look under the hood, right? See what's really going on in your mind and not just, oh, this looks good. But yeah, and you get into the psychology and everything too. I think he covers a lot of that also, like, why'd you make this mistake? Oh, it looked, I wanted to go after the king. I was like, oh, you don't always go after the king. Maybe you should play based on the pawn structure, which indicates you should play on the queen side and things like that, So it's, from when I just glanced at it quickly, but it's his typical kind of, this conversational approach, which I like. And I've borrowed a lot of, or my ideas are definitely inspired a lot by his ideas. So certainly, and he makes it digestible. He keeps it interesting, I think, as someone said. Well, who said that? Which one was easy to digest? Was it, well, I know Alekhine was, I think someone said Silman. No, was there another one who's kind of accessible? What was the one that you said, Ron? He was the most accessible?
No, it was Alessandro was talking about Capablanca.
Oh, Capablanca. Have you read his fundamentals book?
I have, yeah.
You have, Ronnie, have you? Oh, you were speaking about Capablanca in terms of his games, understanding his games, or in terms of his writings, Ronnie?
No, I wasn't saying anything. I was just responding to what Alessandro said, because I thought that was a very useful comment on his part.
But in terms of something that you said, something is more. I think you said something is more digestible, sort of like more accessible. Which one was it? Which one do you think is?
No, I guess maybe maybe you're referring to what I said about Silman, where he had everything geared towards a specific level, which I think is just so very important and so very useful, as opposed to what I saw in Soltis. But maybe again, it may be me, or
no, for sure,
who
it's very
knows.
accessible. Yeah, no, I agree.
Did you let me ask you something real quick, because we just had a comparison of two resources, and if we're dividing up our time, sometimes it's useful to know which is the more advantageous. But it seems like David, you just glanced through Amateur's Mind, and you wouldn't be able to say, hey, well, if you want to read Silman on imbalances, you'd be better off either with Reassess Your Chess, or could you actually get most of the value out of
Mhm.
it in the amateur's mind, which
A
is
good question. A good question. Well, I would probably leave it to you guys. I can make some speculations on that. But I think amateur's mind, I guess it's the way in which it's presented. And again, as Leia said, showing, well, amateur's mind, showing how amateurs can make these mistakes. And then you're reading, because how to reassess your chess instead, I think by contrast, would be showing here's what you should do. This is the acme of chess understanding, whereas amateur's mind might be not so much. These are the things. No, this is how amateurs are thinking. This is not necessarily how you should think, but then he's going to kind of show the corrections there. But that might be relatable to someone who's like, oh, look, this stuff is over my head, right? Then start with meet me where I'm at. Does that make sense? I think that's my assumption about amateur's mind. Kind of meet me where I'm at. Let's have a conversation. And then you start reading that and you're like, oh, I thought the same thing as that. Either I don't know if it's like a fake, if it's like a dummy, no, like not a dummy, like a fake person, or if it's like his real students. I think he had real conversations there. I'm not sure, but just from a few things I've heard about it, or from what I can see, I don't know if you guys know anything more about it, but I do think it's about attempting to make it more accessible than the others even. But certainly if you just want to look at it and be like, I just want to learn what should be the best ideas. I want to have an approach. I mean, I never read The Amateur's Mind, but the other thing about The Amateur's Mind, I think it might be kind of useful for adult learners in a way, because you might have certain patterns you've developed. Maybe you'd be lucky enough not to have developed them if, starting as a kid. But if you guys are starting later on, like after your 20s or 30s or 40s, then maybe certain patterns might come up that you realize, like, okay, this might bring you back to the fundamentals. That, okay, I acknowledge that. I didn't even realize I had that kind of erroneous thought process, right? So that could be useful. What do you guys think? Is there any other thoughts about Amateur's Mind versus the others? But certainly you could read How to Reassess Your Chess in the workbook. You'll get plenty out of that, and the Endgame book. So if you just focus on those books, you'll learn tons, a lot of knowledge. What do you guys think? Any other thoughts about Amateur's Mind in contrast? And then let's talk about my system a bit, and then I'll see if there's anything else on those, or if anyone else has any other thoughts about the other ones, and then we could jump into other things. But what do you guys think about Amateur's Mind or Nimzovich? Anyone else read Amateur's Mind?
John, I hope you don't, I hope it's not impolite to direct the question towards you, but you had a couple of those books. Did you, yeah, I think you had a couple of two of the Nimzovich books. Is there anything that you might like to say about them in terms of, how accessible you thought they were, how useful you thought they were in terms of actually helping out your improvement as a chess player, or any of that stuff? I think would be really like to hear from you on that, if you don't mind.
All right, thanks, Ron. So yeah, I would if I could. Let me tell you a quick history. So I used to work in a prison, and a lot of the inmates used to play chess, and I was really getting interested in the game. So when I was doing room searches or cell searches, I would write down all the ISBN numbers. And then, I'd buy all these books. So I bought a lot of these books. I tried reading some of them. They were just a little too difficult for me. Like I said, the first book I read was The Chess for Dummies. So, I can't say anything about this, my system or anything like that, because I haven't read those yet. The books that I started reading that I felt were easier to read were the openings and the end games. So that's more of the types of books that I was reading. As far as the tactics and all that, I would try reading them, and it was just too difficult for me. So I can't talk much about that, but it was mostly the openings and the end games that I was interested in, that I learned.
And there's like I said, a huge amount of literature on openings.
Yeah.
And I did read that. I read some stuff on the dragon. I mean, because I really had that was my main thing that I did in high school. I played the dragon with black. I think I did the Nimzo Indian. I mostly did against E4. I played the dragon. That was my thing. So you got to know. I mean, E4 is what you're going to see most of the time. So you got to have a good opening against E4. E4, right? E is in Ed4, right? You got against D4 too, but most people, you're mostly seeing E4, right? So you have to have that. So I'd recommend, sure, get a book on that. And now there are some other. We'll get into the tools, online tools, in terms of and we've done another class. And I have a video on that, I think, in terms of how to utilize the opening tools. But really, if you want to master an opening, you should probably get a book on it. or you could do a chessable course, but really, but the book, I mean, it's just all the benefits that books provide, right? You do it at your own pace. You can really, it's, richer in text. Just going to get more. I think you'll get a lot more explanation than you would get. No, I mean, no, there are certainly online sources which have some text. Yeah, you can watch videos. I'm not saying don't do that, right? But at least for us, we're all adults and we grew up with books, right? So we didn't grow up with all the online tools. I mean, I was kind of at the, like, as a millennials, we're kind of at the cusp, right? But I didn't grow, like, what was it called? Like CT Art or something? Some like really difficult tactics training program. And I had the old version of like Fritz, one of the older versions of Fritz, things like that. So I use that a bit, mostly for like to put games in the database and stuff like that, archiving. But yeah, no, I'm definitely going to argue for books. And especially nowadays, probably a lot of youth can use it too, right? So I know their parents are like, hey, get off the screen, right? A lot of their parents anyway. So definitely the younger the Gen Z or whatever the new one is after them, probably wouldn't hurt if maybe they want to like, maybe they're sick of technology and they want to go back to it anyway, some Luddite revolution or something like that. But anyway, I think, books definitely, there are advantages to, like, literacy, in terms of book literacy. So yeah, so I was getting to the openings. So you can certainly get opening books. I wouldn't go crazy with it, but like for the English, and oh yeah, as white. So I played a very, as we've talked about, reverse Sicilians. So I had a very consistent repertoire: English with white, Sicilian with black. So I knew how to use those C pawns very well, right? I learned how to use them a lot. So the whole C, how to handle the light squares with black, and white, no, dark squares with black and light squares with white, C4 guard D5, things like that. So you learn all those themes and you reinforce it by learning it from both sides. Now it just helps you have the first move with white. You're playing the English, a little bit of an edge over Sicilian with black because you have the first move, right? But I read both of those things, and I read a lot about them, and yeah, and I didn't have videos and stuff back then to look at, not really. So anyway, certainly you can do that, but I'd say probably you gain the most from middle game books. Probably that's where you gain the most from books, because just the deep explanations. And again, yeah, supplement that with online resources like Chessable or chess.com studies and chess.com, what do you call them? Chess.com courses and stuff like that. But certainly, yeah, I'd say at least pick a good end game book. Oh, and I wanted to hear, Leah, I wanted to hear if you can share with us about Yusupov, because I know you've talked about learning from Yusupovs. Can you tell us a little bit about that series? It's 9 books. Do you have to read all 9 books, or can you kind of do it piecemeal, or does anyone know about the Yusupov series? Leah, what do you think about that?
I think you're supposed to do them all in order, and I've seen online reviews of people who said who like tried to start at like the second level, and then it was just way too hard and they just had to go back to the beginning. And I think, I mean, I guess you could skip around, but I feel like unless you're really, really good, then you should start at the beginning.
And how has that gone for you? How much have you read, or how's it working for you? Oh, then Ronnie, I'll say raise your hand. But for Leah, how's that gone for you so far?
I'm working through it, but it's slow just because it's just difficult. But it's one of those things where if you put in the effort, you can make improvement. But it's like you can just be staring at one puzzle for a long time and not get it. Although he says that you're not supposed to like obsess over it, but it's
Okay, just kind of have
hard
to move,
not
like you give
to.
yourself like 10 minutes and move on or something. Time yourself.
Yes, I mean that's how it's theoretically supposed to be, but
And these are position, but these are also position. Oh, and then there's also stuff which I'll mention. So again, we'll just kind of hit all these different books and then we'll move on. But there's a lot of stuff to kind of parse out here. These are some of the more famous authors, right? And then we also have Agard. Yeah, Jacob or Agard, I think from Scotland, right? But we'll get into him a little bit too, and I think we'll flesh him out pretty well. But as for, so yeah, positional puzzles, but then I'm thinking Agard also has positional puzzles. So, but that's good. So, but I think it's just, yeah, I know one guy, they called him Champagne. This guy, where's he from? He's like Argentinian and Swiss. So he came to the US for a while, and like he said, people call him Champagne because he's just so like, his attacks will just like start, bubbling up. So he's like a 2200, but like very good attacker. I actually played him once and we drew, partially because we're friends, but no, we had a crazy fight. No, it was a crazy battle. Unfortunately, I was able to hold him off. But anyway, yeah. So, but he read it. Yeah, he read the series and it worked out for him. I mean, he's a solid master. So, but you really got to commit, I think, if you want to do the 9-book series. So I probably wouldn't recommend it from a pragmatic perspective. But if you love the books, I would just argue that you do, some book, right? Pick one of these books and start with it. Ronnie, what were you saying? Give your hand up.
What,
Leia, do you want to finish?
Leia,
I think
Leia,
Leia wanted to
finish
finish
what you're saying. Yeah.
sorry, Leia, I just want to finish your thought on that, I think, on that one.
Yes, well, something I would recommend are the books by Todd Bardwick.
Hmm.
He's they're theoretically aimed at children, but I feel like for people at like the intermediate stage, I think they're very good too, because they are written for children, it's like they really cut to the chase, and he explains things very well.
What's his name again? I didn't get it clearly.
It's Todd, Todd
Mm-hmm.
Bardwick, Bardwick.
Oh, I got it. Nice. Okay, I wasn't sure I was spelling. So children's books that are really cut to the chase. Okay, that's cool. That's good to know. Yeah, some great, like just like Chess Kid, like chesskid.com. Good for kids. It's great. I've recommended to some, like 7-year-olds and stuff, Okay, that's good. And so we're hitting a lot of them. And how about sorry, now back to Ronnie, what were you saying?
Oh, a couple of things. I think I may even have the use Paul book. I think I started with level 1, but that's also I think Leia would agree that can be very, very challenging. When you said, David, spend 10 minutes on a puzzle, 10 minutes on his puzzles, I think would just barely be a beginning with his stuff, at least from my impression of it. But what I raised my hand about in particular is, again, comparing the different if you have resources which have a similar usefulness, let's say, then comparing them to me seems particularly useful for us because we have limited amount of time, and if we're gonna should I choose from column A or column B? So for example, let's say comparing my system by Nimzovich versus not the Amateur's Mind, improving your how to reassess your chess by Silman. I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts as to which one of those might be more useful and more effective in terms of somebody that's trying to improve.
No, my comment on my system. So as I said, my system is really, from what I understand, it's the classic, right? Middle game book. And then as I said, Silman's is kind of the modern classic if we're going to pick one, but it is one book, which is nice, as opposed to Yusupov's 9-book series. So it's but the thing about so because it's a classic, it covers fundamental concepts which you probably already know about. Like the blockade, for example. He talked about the passed pawn is a prisoner that must be kept under lock and key and stuff like that. So these concepts of the blockade and I guess things like fundamental rook end games. I think it covers. Yeah, let me think. What you'd have to look at the chapters. If someone has it handy, Jordan, I think you had it. Can someone pull up the chapters? But it's like it's like rooks invade on the 7th rank, right? So it's kind of like very important concepts that that we take for granted today, but like a lot of neophytes may not have known back then, right? And obviously, chess obviously theory has developed to the extent that things that top players didn't know back then are commonplace today. Not to say that they didn't know stuff, but Steinitz pioneered a lot of this, at least in terms of modern chess understanding, right? Beginning with turn of the 20th century, right? So I think Steinitz and Lasker, some of the early champions, I think they've written stuff too. Lasker's written good stuff. But I will mention that. That's a very accessible book, actually. I just mentioned that. Lasker, Lasker's Manual of Chess. That's another good one. But I would say, so you see what I'm getting at, Ronnie, with my system is that it's fundamentals, right? Kind of basic, but
I'm looking at it. Excuse me for interrupting. I'm looking at it right now, and just to answer the question that you raised, I'm looking at the table of contents. On the center and development, on open files, the 7th and 8th rank, the pass pawn, on exchanging, elements of endgame, the pin, discover check, the pawn chain. Actually, it's a positional play, doubled pawns, isolated pawns, 2 bishops, over protection, maneuvering.
Right. Over protection, that's a big one. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it seems like it's broken down in categories. Again, all I did was glance at the Silman's amateur mind, but it seems like they're very much overlapping. And from the table of contents, it seems like Nimzovich might be actually, quite approachable as well.
Well,
Did
again,
you read it?
I've read quite a bit. I mean, a lot of the books, like I haven't read it word for word, right? Like cover to cover, but a significant amount of it, right? I'd be
Did
like,
you
oh, this
feel
looks
that it
interesting.
was pretty accessible as compared
No,
to?
okay. So yeah, that's why I wanted to get it as well. So the thing about Silman, to contrast them, the thing about Silman versus Nimzovich is Nimzovich is very long-winded. I guess typical kind of German stereotype about German authors being very long-winded. And there's like a guy Hubner. This guy recommended. He's like, oh, check out this Hubner. Like I think he's in German. I am, and he has like game analysis, one game going for like 15 pages or something, right? So like super, super in-depth. So he's a bit long-winded, kind of like me sometimes. He'll go on a lot and a lot. And it's probably it's not as concise as the others, right? Whereas Capablanca, it sounds like Alejandro, you're saying Capablanca is like very concise, right? Gets
yeah, he's
right.
concise.
So Nimzovich does not necessarily cut to the chase. Now, not to say it's not good. I mean, he has a lot of great analysis there that you can learn from. So I think everything has its place, but Nimzovich does cover a lot of fundamentals. So you might have gaps in your game, and if you read that My System, you can't go wrong. It's a classic for a reason, right? Yeah, Alejandro.
Sorry. Yeah, that's kind of the problem I had when I got into try to read My System, is that it was just kind of, for me at least, hard to get into and digest because it was just long-winded, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, whereas Silman, I guess you could say he's kind of chatty in a way, but I like to use some of his ideas. Again, he uses metaphors. He tries to, it's not just like dry, oh, here's what happened and this was good, or this was, like you've seen in the opening book. Oh, plus silver minus, white's better, black's better. Black has compensation for the pawn, So that's just very, it's not, it's not going to help you too much. So it's got some, in other words, it has some texture to it. Lots of texture in both books. But at least from my perspective, I don't know if anyone else has read both or some of both. But I do think I prefer Silman's prose. So yeah.
What I put in the chat is that Nimzovich's writing style is I think some modern people would have difficulties with it because he wrote in a very aristocratic fashion. And as I said, he's very shady in a way that doesn't really come through in English because of the differences in just how German works. So
Interesting. Okay.
I think that, I guess you kind of have to be used to reading old Germanic writing, even in a translation, because he's not going to, I think he would be appalled at Jeremy Silman's delivery. He would think it's too
frivolous.
Informal. This is also a guy who would throw tantrums if someone was smoking during a tournament in a period where basically everybody was smoking. So
didn't work out too well for him in terms of competition. But yeah, definitely a great theorist. And it's interesting too, what I've heard is that he kind of possibly, and I don't want to spread rumors about him, but at least I think I've heard this, that he would kind of adopt some ideas as his own, even though he didn't necessarily come up with them. But I mean, it's kind of like this controversy around Alekhine's gun versus Capablanca. Like, I think that Capablanca did the gun thing with the two rooks in front of the queen first, if you look at the record, but then it's called Alekhine's gun. Well, he got credit for it. So I think that Nimzovich may have gotten, well, at least he certainly got a lot of credit for certain things because he articulated them and it became famous, right? But of course, he didn't reinvent the wheel and come up with it all from scratch, right? At any rate, look, I mean, he still articulates it well, as you said. That's interesting how you put it. This kind of, coming from German, being translated, it's just different, right? And it's his own aristocratic style, as you said, and all that combined. But still, it's a great book. And like I said, so Ronnie, does that make sense? Like the fundamentals are all there. And overprotection, for example, is a really interesting concept. Now, it's not like that. It's not like it's always going to be useful to you, but it's interesting to know that. He uses the French defense as an example, where you push the e5 pawn, push the e5, and you overprotect the pawn. So things like that, it's interesting. And it might just help you in your defense in general. Like, keep your, for example, just securing a certain point or securing your center, and how that might help you not to be counterattacked and things like that. You're ready to blow up the position, things like that. So, but yeah, so does that make sense a bit, Ronnie, in terms of how useful My System can be? But definitely useful.
Yeah, but again, and I hate to be repeating myself too much, but you know, it's a matter of making a choice. I think that Nimzovich certainly could be useful, but I think I might you know, lean more in the direction of Silman at this point. Start with that and then see you know, if I want to go
Yes.
on with Nimzovich
Yeah,
or
yeah.
not.
Well, here's another suggestion. Yeah, definitely go with, can't go wrong with Stillman. Another suggestion is just to look at Nimzovich's stuff and just, you know, just look at the chapters and say, oh, well, I didn't know much about overprotection. Let me spend a couple hours and let me read about overprotection. And I know about rooks on the seventh. Let me see what he has to say about the central control, because you can't get enough on that, right? So you look at a couple of his examples. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what I do, you know. It's like someone described like, oh, well, I'm gonna have some literature over here, and I have a poetry book in the bathroom, and you know, so you kind of take what you know, pick and choose a little bit, right? But maybe they have their tablet somewhere else with your tactics on it in the that's in the attic or something, right? So you kind of you just kind of have everything has its place. You know, you got, hopefully you're not reading in the car. You got your podcast in the car, you know, listening to Perpetual Chess podcast or something, right? So anyway, but yeah, I would recommend just pick up his book, see what you think about it. And yeah, just look at stuff that you're not sure about. Be like, well, look at the overprotection section. Look at how he emphasizes the blockade. You know, he really reinforces the notion of the blockade, right? So that's what is that reasonable, Ronnie? I'd say check it out. Look at a
Yeah.
couple of things, but focus on, yeah, I would, for my suggestion is look at the modern classic. If we can call it that. I think I've heard it described as the modern classic. And then anything else, look, it's like you get to some fundamentals, get through your fundamentals, and then you kind of just over the years will end up digging into different things, right? Like then later on, I looked at Bronstein's or Alekine's games, you know, so I looked at their analyses later on, say, oh, that's all good stuff. Again, like I would say, Jordan, the argument there is you have your system down, whether it's my system or whatever it is, and then those things are all supplemental. And you say, hey, is Alekine, how is what he's saying either driving with or conflicting with what I learned from Nimzovich, for example? So you see how that plays out in real competition, and you see, oh yeah, someone talked about different imbalances. Oh, I see where it'll reinforce things for you. Like, oh, so here he's able to, you know, oh, I like the nuance of the exchange sacrifice is such an important positional idea. Like, oh, okay, I see why Alekine did that. He did that just to get, you know, or he's able to win this endgame exchange down because he's a pawn up in such good structure or something. You know what I mean? So it'll just reinforce it because there's so much nuance, because so much complexity to chess. You obviously can't boil it down to one, I'll just use the word system, whoever does the system, right? So you get your system down that you like. And then, yeah, then it's like you have a worldview, right? You develop a worldview, but and then if you're seeking, if you're seeking the truth, which you must be, hopefully in the real world, but in chess, you have to be seeking the truth, because the truth is what's the best move, right? Very simple. What is the best move? What's the best way to win? So your worldview, you have to be, that's a good thing that chess teaches us. You have to be open-minded, because that's in accordance with seeking the truth, right? So if your worldview / you know, understanding of chess via certain theories is challenged, then you have to be open-minded about it. It was like I was listening to Richard Dawkins recently. That was an interesting, he's talking to some like religious class about his theory of evolution. So it was very about evolution. So it was very interesting. But he's like, yeah, if someone else came along that challenged my views on evolution, okay, I'd accept it. You know, he's like, you guys don't have to all do the same thing and be a fundamentalist either. He's like, that's what science is about. So that we're seeking the truth, right? That's science. Ideal at its best, right? So yeah, same thing with chess. It's a science in a way that you're seeking the truth, but it's also messy. It's kind of more like in social science in some ways, because it's very messy. You know, it's hard to, if you can't just do, the laboratory is your 64 squares. But anyway, I'm going on, but you're trying to get at the root to the core of what matters. And in some cases, it's going to be the exchange sacrifice, or in some cases, to use a basic example, like someone talks about the minor piece, the battle of the minor pieces, bishops and knights, cats and dogs. He was in favor of cats. I'm in favor of dogs, by the way, for the most, except for big cats. I like lions and stuff. But anyway, he'd talk about that. And so sometimes the knights are better than the bishops. Sometimes the bishops are better than the knights, right? So but you have to know when it applies. And then it's kind of like you're using each game. Think of it like this. It's more like a social science in a way, because we're using case studies. So each game is its own case study that's helping us to get closer to the truth. I mean, it's the science of chess, right? But again, but it's not like, maybe a computer would have it down perfectly, but either way, you you have to rely on some theory because we can't calculate everything. We can't know everything that this is for sure going to work. So that's where we have to, we learn our theory and we test our theory and we test it through our games, and sometimes we're right and sometimes we're not. We get stronger. So, but anyway, yeah. So does that make sense? So kind of this, but that's, it's like anything, law, whatever, science, some science. This is our theory that we're learning, and we have to be, and each book, you see the extent to which each book either agrees with another one or doesn't. And then, see overlapping themes, which might reinforce it. And you start using it in your games like, oh, cool, that worked. Well, I have a new way I can win. Every time you look at a GM game, apart from these books, just independently, say, how does this GM win? That's what I'm asking. Now, I might be drawing from, of course, I'm drawing from my understanding of these books and my own games, watching other games, and it all comes together. So you effectively ultimately you have to arrive at your own theory of chess, your own evolving theory, because you can't, no one's going to, they might, but to get at the truth of the game, you can't just be spoon-fed one thing, but then you also got to grapple with it and see how you can apply it on your own and adjust accordingly, right? So it's a whole mix. They have all these moving parts, and that's what, to be a very good chess player, you have to be good at handling complex. You're trying to break it down, kind of trying to keep it simple, but obviously it gets complicated, and that's what we're trying to deal with. We don't want it to get too complicated, but you got to deal with the complexity out there. And what I call it is simplifying complexity. So you got to deal with all that complexity, and hopefully now I'm pulling it back in, right? We have it all out there. Now we pull it back in and make it a theory. But again, it's a theory that's compressed now, but knowing that, like any theory, knowing that it has its limitations. So really it's applicable to, very much applicable to sciences and stuff, I think. Anyway, that was long, but you guys have any other thoughts? I think we've gone through quite a few of the books now. Do you guys have any other thoughts about them, since we did cover Nimzovich now? And so we pretty much, now this thing is being weird, and it's not showing me the top. It's getting in the way. I don't know about these whiteboards, but do you guys have any other thoughts? Any other books we didn't cover? I mean, I think we at least touched on a few of them. Think about the relationship, and that's just a question to think about in the future. What is the relationship between these books? What's the theory? And again, like I said, maybe focus on one, but be willing to dig into a few more and even like half read them, right? Just skim through a few in your spare time,
Now
Yep,
that
John?
I've been working with you, David, I get a better understanding of how to play the game, and I'm glad I have these books because, as I was listening to everyone talk about it, my system book, when I was going through the titles as Jordan was reading them off the table of contents, I think I can have a better understanding. I get to pick which chapter I want to learn, whether it's the pawn structure or whatever, and then just going through my books now. And I have a couple of Soltis books. So, I thought it was Silman. But yeah, so now that I have these books, I'm finally going to be able to use them.
That's good. So now you have a little more kind of put everything into context a little more, but then it's up to you as to how you want to use them. But yeah, certainly. I mean, Ronnie, no one can say, I can't say it has to be this one. Now, again, I do recommend Stillman's books. I like his books. So if I'm going to give you one, How to Reassess Your Chess. Oh, it's interesting. What I was getting at earlier, I didn't quite come full circle there, but version 4, I do think it's, maybe that one's a little more long-winded, because what I was saying is I like some of the chapters in version 3, the way he phrases them. One of his critiques, actually, one of my students said about version 4 in particular, but some in version 3, is he's saying that some of his, he'll say, oh, and then black won in 30 moves, and then it fizzled out into a draw. He's like, well, give me something conclusive, but that's not the point. The point is you're trying to get to that nugget of wisdom that's embedded in that one, within the 10 moves that he's showing you, right? As long as you can extract some wisdom from that, it doesn't really matter what happened, I mean, it's nice to say, oh, and black got an advantage and went on to win, but maybe black messed up and got in a time pressure and didn't win. That's another topic as to how to convert, which actually I'll mention. But there's a good book on that. But yeah, you get the idea. So the point is, can you extract some knowledge? You could think for yourself. You can figure out how to use it, and it doesn't really matter if it doesn't apply for the entire game all the time. Although it is nice, that's why I recommend looking at like the Capablanca game. You see the thrust, you see the arc of the entire game. Very lucid play. You see how he gets his advantage in the opening. He milks it in the middle game. He gets a little more, gets a decisive advantage. Then he finishes him off nice and smooth. That's nice too. That has its place, which is why I will also mention another book I really recommend for endgames, just super, super useful. Chernev's Capablanca's Best Endings, I think it's called. because the great thing about this book is it's not an isolated endgame study book. Most endgame books are, oh, here's the theoretical position. Here's what's happening. Here's Lucena's position. You got to know that stuff too. Basic Lucena's position, Philidor's position, basic rook endgame is very important. Got to know that bishop of opposite colors are drawish, but they don't always draw. You know, you got to know about the bishop. You know, the wing pawn needs to be on the same, wing pawn in that corner. If it's a dark squared corner, you want to have a dark squared bishop to control that corner to promote. Right? Otherwise, it's a draw if you just have a king there. If it's king against king and king versus king, bishop, and pawn, you got to have the bishop on the same color as the pawn to come in the corner, right? To be able to promote things like that. But beyond that, you know, it's very nice because Capablanca's best endgames, again, it shows you the entire thrust of the game, the whole the through line. So it shows you the through line from the opening to the middle game to the end game. You could look at the end game in isolation, and even then you're going to see a full end game. But it's very nice. It really helps you with mastery of chess to study this book, because again, it's Capablanca, super lucid, just super clear, amazing play, elegant play, but understandable. And he'll explain it for you. Anything that you wouldn't have understood otherwise, boom, there it is. And Chernev does a nice job. I think. Oh, here's one more for you. I think Chernev actually does. I actually recommended it to someone. I just came up. And he just told me yesterday, he's like, oh, I got the book. It's great. I think it's called Logical Chess Move by Move. That's another one. That's one that dissects a lot of famous games. You guys know that book? Logical Chess Move by Move?
Yeah, he has two
Yes.
very highly recommended books, Logical Chess Move by Move and The Most Instructive Games of Chess. Both of
Oh, yeah,
those
very,
get,
very similar. Right. That's actually
yeah.
what I might be thinking of, but very similar ideas, but both are include instructive games, right? But yeah, I would say probably go with most instructive games of chess, because just can't go wrong with that, right? I mean, if nothing else, kind of like with what Jordan's talking about, you study some great games, you have some great analysis. Again, it's nice to have that, at least to attempt to root that in theory. And again, and be willing to have that blown up a little bit. But the same thing, like, look, the theory is, okay, I say double pawns are bad. Well, really the theory on that is double pawns are either good or bad depending on the circumstance. So your theory just evolves, but that is true. That is true. Yeah, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. But it does tend to be true that, you know, that they are rigid. It tends to be true that double isolated pawns can be attacked more easily. It's also true that they open up files. It's also true that they control more squares. That's all true. It just matters. What matters is what you're applying in a given position, which one of those, where you're taking a risk. You're like, look, they're going to be weaker, but they're also going to provide me with some dynamics on the files or some, you know, things like that. So that is true. It just depends. But you're gonna evolve. That understanding will evolve beyond just, oh, I thought double pawns were bad, or oh, I thought they were good only in this instance, or whatever. So anyway, that's really good. Now we're really fleshing it out, though, right? This looks. What do you think, Ryan? I think we hit. Does that make sense, though, in terms of a few different ones you could think about? But again, you can maybe focus on a couple. Here's what I would. So I would say you have your basic theory ones, and then everything else is supplementary. Does that make sense? And then now let's go beyond the books. But in terms of books, and then, okay, of course, there's a huge opening archive out there. But these are middle game books. And then I mentioned a couple end game books, by the way. So we have the best endings. And then there's, oh, by the way, I will mention attack. Okay, let's get into a couple different times. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, we can't just go straight to digital resources, because there's a ton of chess literature out there that we need to appreciate, right? So yeah, Lasker's Manual Chess, that's worth checking out. I'm not sure about Steinitz, because they talk about Steinitz having created a science of chess. I think he was a doctor, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first official world champion, not 1886. And then Lasker was second. He had the title for, what was it, 26 or 27 years. And then from 1921, I'm mixing up the dates. I think it's 21 to 26 or 7. I think 21 to 27 was Capablanca. So we have our three first champions, Steinitz, Lasker, Capablanca. At the very least, we have Lasker and Capablanca covered here. I'm not sure if you guys want to check Steinitz. I'm sure he did, because they talk about him creating the science of chess. I know he's written some stuff. Otherwise, I don't know how he'd propagate all that, except for just looking at his games. Okay, what else? So we have chess tactics. Okay, now it's filling. I think it's become filled up. I guess I'll move on to another box. There we go. Chess tactics for the tournament player. I really like that one. That's a great book. Kasparov actually, well, at least you know, gives an endorsement of the book. Chess tactics for the tournament player. Excellent. So it's really tough tactics, like everything you need to know, all the main tactical themes. They get pretty difficult, but they break it down and then they give you puzzles at the end of each section. Pretty lucidly explained, but really great puzzles. And then speaking of another great puzzle book, very, very difficult puzzles. I just picked it up. I just found it sitting in my car, like underneath something yesterday, and I pulled it out for my student. Combination Challenge. Really great book. with an exclamation mark. I think it has. But that's a really good, and then they also have endgame challenge, by the way, which is puzzle based endgame study. So each one is not like, oh, play out a bunch of moves. No, it's just a pure study. I mean, a pure puzzle. But and it's nicely categorized. So you have, knight endgames, bishop endgames, queen and pawn endgames. You have bishop versus knight. I mean, and you have a you have exchange up endgames. It's pretty much you got it all, right? So this is a nice one. And you could learn it by doing the quizzes, or you could just simply learn it by looking at the answers. Saying, okay, you can look at a few answers, maybe the first few puzzles in a section, then you could try more on your own. So endgame challenge as well, very good ones. Just things I've come across. Anything else? Those are good for tactics. And then of course we can't leave out the Polgar one. I haven't read that actually. I know a lot of people like to read the Polgar one. Can anyone else talk? I can't say too much about it, although I know there's a ton of puzzles. Is it just a bunch of puzzles, or is there anything else? It's the
There's some
Polgar father,
games.
right?
There's some games. Yes, I see it on one of my many bookshelves.
Yeah,
We were going through that at the beginning. It's
right.
it's like this giant phone book of a book that's full of puzzles, and I think there's some complete games too.
But mostly it's about the puzzles, right?
Let me
So if
go
you're
look.
looking for good puzzles, yeah, it's a tome. I mean, it's just a plethora of material in there. But now that's the kind of thing that might drive someone it might be a little overwhelming, I would imagine. So I never read it. I just didn't really see the need because I found it just didn't come up for me. Like it just didn't come up and wasn't recommended to me or anything. I just found
It
other things
has
just came to me, that I
it
ended up
has
reading first.
5,334 problems, combinations, and games. So
I'd write that down. 5,334 combinations, puzzles, and games.
Oh, that's her father.
Yeah, right. So he's the PhD who's like, I'm gonna turn my daughters into chess champions, right? Which is an interesting
yes,
debate.
basically his idea was that if you can take any individual, and if you intensely teach them something at a very young age, you can basically create anybody can be a genius regardless of their race, gender, background, whatever. And so he basically used his daughters as a social experiment, one could say. And
Hmm.
there have been many instances that people have done that and that have led to very, very bad endings, like Michael Jackson. I read about there was this one guy who was who was raised to be like the best athlete ever, and he burned out and became a drug addict. But
Ooh,
apparently in this
like a
case,
child actor. Apparently, what?
but apparently in this case, it actually did work out very well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, not everyone has the resources, or obviously, the skills that what's his name? Which Polgar? Do you know his name?
Laszlo,
That Laszlo, yeah, okay, Hungarian, right? That Laszlo Polgar had. I assume he's not alive anymore, is he?
no,
I think his daughters are like what, 40s, 50s, or something like that. I think they're probably middle aged. Yeah, I think what Susan Polgar is what, 50s, I'd say.
yes,
And then Judah's a little younger, right?
I think she's 47.
Okay, so like 40s, 50s. Well, nowadays that's more like third age or something. We'll pretend that's like third age these days, okay? Not quite a midlife crisis yet, hopefully. But yeah, the Polgar sisters, that's fascinating. I haven't actually seen the documentary yet. Have you guys seen the documentary on
No. Where is that? Is that on YouTube?
I don't know. I mean, it's I'm not sure if it'll be on YouTube. Have you guys seen it somewhere? I think it would just be on maybe on like Netflix or something. Have you guys found it? Or it might just be like its own thing where you'd have to get the, dare I say DVD. I'm not sure where you'd find it. Have you guys seen it?
I didn't know there was one.
Yeah. Hold on. So, oh, I'm not sharing screen, but hold on one second. Let me just see. Polgar Sisters doc. Maybe it's like a 60 minutes. Who knows what? Let's see. Polgar Sisters documentary. The Polgar variant. Interesting. And funny enough, side story that apparently Susan or Zsuzsa Polgar helped Fischer develop the variant of chess 960. A story of three Hungarian Jewish sisters who were raised in communist Budapest of the 1970s, to be chess masters. Interesting. So I'll share screen. I'll share that
Yeah,
There's
and
not.
where is that available?
Oh, I'm just seeing the IMDb thing pop up. I
Oh,
wonder if it might not be like it. Maybe it just didn't really make it online. I don't know. Do you guys see it anywhere online? Is it okay? Well, let me now. I'm going to search for the thing. It's called Polgar. Let's see specifically the Polgar variant. Um, you have to. Yeah, I see something on Ruth Films for $29.90. So I'm guessing you buy the DVD or something. So maybe it's that it.
Is it
Yeah,
originally
maybe it did. Maybe you can't
Hungarian?
stream it. What's that?
Is it originally a Hungarian documentary?
Hmm. I don't know. I know it's I think it's in English, but language Hebrew. Interesting. It's Hebrew, English, and Hungarian with English subtitles.
wow.
So I guess it's probably mostly in Hungarian. I guess. Written by Yossi Avram.
Oh, that's an Israeli guy, probably.
So yeah, I guess it was made in Israel, maybe made in Hebrew originally. Interesting. Um, yeah, I'll send you the at least that's the web page for it. But yeah, it looks like you can't just click on it unless you never know. Look it up on YouTube. Maybe you can pull these parts of it on YouTube. Okay, so actually I'll just put it right there. So yeah, I'm just things are just coming up as we're talking. But no, some of these are the other ones that I didn't pull up. Actually, let me just pull it up real quick just to see anything else I didn't think of. Because we've covered Art of Attack and Chess. We got to talk about that. Let me see if I'm missing anything else. Yeah, I've covered pretty much everything else here. There's Modern Endgame Practice by Belyavsky. And then of course there's also Dvoretsky's Endgame. So in terms of Endgame, yeah, but that would be really the other one to mention would be Dvoretsky's and then Art of Attack, a couple other classics. Now these are not middle games, right? We were talking about middle games, but definitely Dvoretsky's Endgames book. And then, but definitely you got to read Art of Attack. And that's the thing to read. I actually looked up a chessable course. I don't think they have a chessable course, but they do have one in Spanish. So I was giving this Colombian team I know, so that I trained once. So I sent them the Spanish. It's like $25 or something. It has a full course in Spanish, but I don't think they have one in English. Therefore, you should read the book. But yeah, you have to read Art of Attack, and I was going to say Art of Defense as well, and that's Soltis's attempt. Jordan, you have Art of Defense and Chess, right? That's the counter, right? But Vukovic actually does.
Oh,
Vukovic does actually cover defense in one section. Well, the whole thing, obviously, it has defense. Every time you're thinking about attacking, you got to think about defense. It shows you all the best defenses to everything, but a focus on defense. There's a chapter, and of course, Art of Defense and Chess, also a great book. What's that, Jordan?
Oh, I was just saying I have Art of Attack too, and it's on Chessable. I
It
would
is on
leave
Chessable.
the choice. Yeah.
Oh, you'd figure, yeah, you'd figure. So there you go. So there's our seg into opening it up to Chessable courses.
And
But
what's
that's
your
among
take on it? What's your reaction to it, John? Have you used it at all?
It was hard for me. Like I felt like the you have to take these like abstract, somewhat abstract concepts like focal points and things, and be able to transfer those concepts to specific positions. I actually thought it was much more difficult than certain things that other I think some people think it's like like a pretty easy baseline book. I found it more challenging than some other books,
Oh,
but
it's very hard. It's very hard. Yeah, but if you want to become a great attacker, it's mandatory, I'd say. I mean, well, Emery Tate famously said that, if you've heard of Emery Tate, international master, basically could have been a GM, but super great attacker. He died a few years ago. Actually, he died apparently either on the chessboard or during a chess tournament. Emery Tate, but amazing attacker. People said he'll sack. I think we did a video on him. It said he would sack pawns like pieces. Pieces like pawns. Just throwing at you, very intuitive. But there's a famous game against, speaking of Israeli, against Hugh Dawson, and he beat Dawson pretty nicely. So a few wins against really strong GMs and beautiful games. Anyway, he said Art of Attack and Chess was the only book he ever read. So I maybe in jest, but definitely Art of Attack and Chess. I mean, it's very advanced topic. Some of it's easier than others, right, Tori? I mean, for example, it covers the classic bishop sacrifice. but it just shows you it takes it to the next level, because we all know about it. We've learned about bishop takes h7 check thing, or h2, but then it covers, oh, here's some examples where it works and others where it doesn't, and some where it kind of works, so maybe it's not totally accurate, but you kind of get away with it, so, and here's the best defense against the classic bishop sacrifice. So I mean, that is just useful, so again, you can pick and choose, be like, I want to work on that a little bit, or I want to work, I like this concept of, actually we did a class once on focal points. I don't know who was there, maybe Leah, you were there, maybe John, we did focal points. So we took, there's actually a study on, I think we did a video, it should be on a video, where there's a study on lead chess of focal points. And so we just, rather than looking at the book, we said, hey, look, this person already extracted those focal point puzzles or the examples from the book. So we just studied those. Now, if you want, now that's pretty heavy. Yeah. If you're going to read that book, it's going to take you a while. But look, if let's say you were going to take a summer, or like, let's say this summer, I'm going to knock out this book, you would do really well. Yeah. If you're going to, oh, they're peeing on my grass. If you're going to focus on that would definitely serve you well. Like if you say, oh, I'm going to, Silman's, yeah, I mean, like Silman's book, if you're going to read that over summer, that would serve you very well. So, yeah, but definitely can't go wrong. And then, so again, supplementary material, art of defense and chess. You just keep developing as a chess player. It's like the kind of thing, like, oh, I heard about this book, let me buy this. So I know, just have to be voracious about it in a way, like, oh, I'm really curious about this. A lot of strong chess play comes from curiosity, right? Again, seeking the truth. So again, you're interested in what are these focal points? Let me find out about them. Oh, it works here, it doesn't work there. Why is that? So you ask yourself these questions. Oh, art of defense, like, oh, how do I defend against a pawn storm? Well, I want to learn about that. So you just kind of devour it, and that's pretty much what I've done. I say, okay, cool. Now I know how to make a pawn storm. I know how to defend against a pawn storm. And definitely your curiosity will be piqued when you end up losing. You end up losing horribly to a bayonet attack. And you're like, okay, well, we did the video on that recently, right? Well, now I want to learn about bayonet attacks. How do they actually work? Oh, this is actually not that strong of a bayonet attack. Here's how I can refute it. See, so it comes from curiosity. Obviously, that's why that's redundant and that's simple. But that's why, we probably read books because we're curious about things. But really, it's a drive for curiosity. And so even though it sounds so difficult, and again, you don't have to read the whole thing. But let's say you're curious about bayonet attacks or focal points. So Jordan, maybe it's a matter of just tackling focal points, but I bet you when you study that chapter on focal points, you're going to be a much stronger chess player. There's 50 ELO points, right? No, but really, I mean, that's going to allow you to do one high level attacking, but also just being like, let's say a club player. I mean, you're going to have new weapons. You're just developing your arsenal. You're going to have some new weapons you could use. And if you read Art of Defense in chess, well, you're not going to be so afraid anymore. You'll be more confident in your defense. You'll be like, you know what, come at me. I'm going to go ahead and take that piece or that pawn. You go attack me and I'll handle it, Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to catch up on your guys. There are a few comments. Let's catch up on now that I think that's pretty exhausting. I mean, there's always more, but I think that's pretty, we spent over an hour on the game, on the books. And I think there's a lot of rich stuff in there, right? You guys brought in some great stuff. I had a few that I knew, you had a few you guys knew. So do you have any other questions about the books? Well, let me see what you guys wrote. If there's anything regarding books, let me see what's here. Jordan, you said chess. Okay, then we'll see what else comes up. You said chesstempo.com. That's a great website because they have really good puzzles, right? Chess Tempo. You said as an adult improver, in late 2009 through 2010, I would solve puzzles on there for 1 to 2 hours each day. I would set goals for puzzle rating, and then once I hit that goal, I would try to stay above the peak for as many puzzles as possible. I improved from USCF 1400 to over 1600 that year. I'm not as strong as a calculator at calculation and tactics now as I was, but I have more positional understanding now that I didn't get then. Yeah, right. So you mix that, you fill in your gaps, right? So you got your strong positional understanding, mix that with tactical understanding, blend it all together, right? And you become stronger and stronger. But yeah, the puzzles there are different, right, Jordan? You said chess tempo, yeah.
Yeah,
different nature of
puzzles. They're taken from like grandmaster games.
Oh, okay.
And the thing that I think really changed for me was just looking at the chess board. It almost became like an instant reaction where after every move by either player, I was just taking an inventory of, what the unprotected pieces were.
Uh-huh.
So, or and like, okay, every kind of like every move, how did the position change? Right? Like,
Mhm.
okay, they just did this, or is something now overworked? Is something now it really helped me tactically. The problem is I didn't know anything. Like, I hadn't worked with David at that point. Didn't know anything positionally or anything like that. So all I would do is like try and make things as complicated as possible, tactically crazy as possible. No, and so sometimes, I'd that caused problems. But
You bring it all together. You have more legit. You can bring some more legitimacy to the board. You don't have to just. I was talking about that with someone recently. Yeah, a guy I'm probably be teaching. He said also an adult learner. And he said he'll just kind of like not really know about what the opening is, so kind of like just throw a pawn at them or something, and hopefully sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Hope he can rely on some attacking skills, but he hasn't quite brought it all together. So like, let's say he works on his defense, he'll be more confident in that. Essentially, by having all that stuff, bring it all together, you could play a little more kosher chess in that sense. I guess not needing to be super speculative. Not that you can't be speculative, but you'll be you'll be confident, well grounded, and not need to essentially go out on a limb necessarily, right? Only when you feel like you need to, but you're confident handling any kind of position, and good tactical understanding from GM games, good piece awareness. That means that you're confident attacking, and again, the converse is you're more confident in defending as well. So you got this kind of thing. Again, you got art of it. You got the book version, art of attack, art of defense. And by the way, I forgot to mention art of attack in chess. It's also a huge part of it is setting up attacks. Setting up attacks, not just how do I attack? How do I actually get an attacking position? How does it pertain to the center? How do I get a strong center? And then how does a strong center actually translate into a strong attack on the king side? So we said preconditions. Should I commit, or I was talking about that a lot yesterday. With my student, should I commit or not? Preconditions for attack. So that's really important there. And then this as well is useful, but then you got the actual tactics when there's that crescendo, right? That key moment, boom, then the tactics happen. But it doesn't happen all the time. But then obviously your calculation strength, it'll help you. Your calculation strength will carry you across the game, because there may not be a critical moment yet, but you need to know that the critical moment may arise in certain lines. But just in general, hey, I can maneuver here and they can maneuver there, kind of softer calculation. But then that hard calculation, like boom, there's like a 10 move mate, or there's like clearly winning a piece here. But then there's that, and then there's somewhere in between where it's like there is a forcing line if this and this and this happens. So it's like a sideline that's forcing that I need to know, although it probably won't even come to pass. So anyway, that'll improve your tactics / calculation skills.
And I feel like it also improved my own kind of like peace security, just like understanding, like what can create tactical situations, and not, having looser or overworked pieces.
Yeah, definitely, because the fundamentals, right? So he really emphasizes the kind of bread and butter of it. Emphasizes, yeah, you really the bread and butter of tactics, which is loose pieces and exposed kings. I mean, that's easy to say. All this is easy to say, right? See, well, focal point, a little trickier, right? Well, focal point's a target in front of the king, but then there are complex focal points too. That's a little trickier, right? But this is pretty simple. Loose pieces, exposed kings. It's simple, but you have to really, you gotta, keep hitting at that, right? So you really reinforce it. So it becomes like part of your it just becomes fundamental chess understanding, like instinctive. Okay. So anything else? Chess tempo, any other? Oh, okay, I'm working through the list then. So you have chess tempo was mentioned. What else? The comments. Ed said he has bad internet connection, but he did read how to reassess. I think he said it's like a 1600. He said he loves how to reassess your chess. It was interesting, focused on key moments, clearly explained. What would we say is most similar in style to that? Capablanca, Alekhine, in terms of, I guess I can't ask him now, he's gone, but I guess he's similar style in terms of explanation or player. Oh yeah, I think he's referring to Capablanca's book or Alekine's book. What do you guys think? How to reassess your Silman versus right. So we focused on we contrasted him with Nimzovich. How about Capablanca or Alekine or anyone else? I don't know. Maybe a blend. They're both a little more concise, probably. I'm not sure about it. Sounds like they're more concise. He's not quite as concise. He's a blend. Yeah, he's somewhere in between them and Nimzovich. How about that? Something like that. And again, I like to use some of his stuff in my own like analysis. So I'm his protege, I guess, indirectly through his readings, but I definitely like to borrow from his stuff a lot. So it's good stuff. Yeah. Okay. So then what else do we have? Oh, she was talking about, yeah, Leah mentioned this too. She said, when you read Nimzovich in German, he's very shady in a way that doesn't come through in English. More motivation for me to go back to German. Now, shady, that's interesting. Or in terms of, wait, yeah, Leah, what do you mean by shady? I think you kind of covered it. But in
I
terms of
mean, it's like basically can be very condescending to people that like to players who have more of the classical view of chess, or just people he just doesn't like. Because in German you have formal pronouns and informal pronouns, and the formal pronouns obviously are people you would who like rank above you socially, and
Mhm.
the informal ones are for like people that you're really close friends with, and it's like a big deal if like someone allows you to use informal pronouns with you. And so he might use formal pronouns. No, I think it's the other way around, where he generally uses the formal pronouns, but then uses them, or like the informal ones, but like does it in a way that's condescending.
Okay.
So it's like, and like that doesn't exist in English because it's not an inflected language.
Well,
So
like Spanish has usted is formal, right?
yeah.
So it might be
So it's
similar to
like
Spanish.
so it's like you can be polite to someone but still be insulting them at the same time, which you can't really
Okay.
do in English.
Interesting. I totally forgot. Since you mentioned the new, I wasn't even thinking of that. I didn't mention it earlier. Since you mentioned this kind of the old ways. Now, Nimzovich was kind of like hyper modern, right?
Yeah.
So where Steinitz was, I didn't mention that. So and again, we just have to find a Steinitz book. Maybe you guys can pull it up. I'm sure I'm sure if you look at Steinitz, you'll find it. Yeah, you'll find a Steinitz book. But Nimzovich was about the hyper modern school. So like his proteges in a way might be, well, interestingly, Fischer, Bard, he liked Steinitz a lot too. I mean, you got to pull from all of them and be eclectic, you know. But that's the thing. Oh, congrats, Alejandro. Baby there, huh? So you're,
No, thank you. Yeah, it's been
how many kids do you have now?
just one. He's just 5 weeks old now.
Oh yeah, look like a little baby. Nice. 5 weeks. Congratulations. You see, you're probably tired right now. You have to but you're able to take a break.
Yeah, I was able to take a little break.
Yeah, that's good. It's a fleeting moment, you know, so you appreciate it. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, so Nimzovich is more hyper modern in a sense in terms of eschewing the old concepts, you know, classical center and stuff like that. But just increasing our understanding of the center, understanding that it's not, we've talked about this, right? And it's not just about having pawns in the center. It's about control, right? And that control may be pieces that are controlling the center. So it might be that they've pushed their pawns in the middle. Maybe they've pushed a little more, or maybe they're just like totally dominating with their pawns, but you're targeting those pawns. And so yeah, they're there and they look nice and all. They look pretty in the center, but they're being pummeled by your pieces. So or maybe you get them to you prove that, hey, you don't get to be there anymore. You have to push forward. Oh, that's aggressive. You're in my territory. But every time a pawn pushes, there's also a weakness that's made. It's committal. So you force them to make commitments. That's one of the ideas of hypermodern chess. So, but fundamentally, it's not just, I overextend, not just not just the abstract concept of I get you to overextend, but that you're specifically working for piece control as well. Ultimately, what are you trying to do? You're trying to invade with pawns are cool too, but quick wins by Morphe and stuff. What we're invading with our pieces. Ultimately, that would be nice, because you're going to mate a lot quicker with your pieces than your pawns. your pawns can work in tandem with pieces, and they'll help make it possible. But yeah, and ultimately, but this is all based on, again, pawns that solve chess. Going back to that, it's all based on the pawn structure. So anyway, Nimzovich covers that a ton. Covers the modern approach, hyper modern approach, I guess we'd say. Although that was hyper modern, it doesn't sound so hyper modern in the 21st century. But yeah, I mean, and interestingly, some of the ideas from just about 100 years ago haven't developed that much since then. Really, if you think about it. So someone at that age, like let's say Alekhine, who was steeped in that, of course. So, you know, I think people say, oh, well, this guy's from the early 20th century, you know, they wouldn't, or especially 1800s, they wouldn't be that good. No, they were outliers. And even with Alekhine's understanding then, if you put him with today's masters, he would do very well. I have no doubt about that. Yeah, and he could always brush up if he wanted to. He'd brush up on his theory, but he was an incredible chess player, you know, and that's coming on basically that's the same age as Nimzovich, pretty much. Maybe actually maybe he wouldn't have been motivated, inspired by him yet. I don't know. But especially, yeah, or like Fischer, for example. Fischer, that's we're talking about 60s and 70s. So that was obviously after Nimzovich's ideas were around. And so you have all these ideas floating around. Fischer, 1800s, first half of the 1900s, and he absorbed all that. But I mean, obviously he was an incredible outlier. But yeah, you put him today, he would completely do fine, right? But that's Fischer, right? But still, any outlier you take them, doesn't matter where you put it. But anyway, in general, not just those people, but the understanding, a lot of that was developed by not promulgated by Nimzovich or propagated by him. So at least he gets credit for that. He did good work of articulating it, and it was spread around. I don't know how many languages. You said from German to English. It's probably in a lot of different languages. But yeah, at least German and English, probably French and others. But anyway, yeah, it's very good stuff. So there's another benefit to my system. And again, and Chess Praxis. I don't know the exact differences, but just other works of his. So definitely worth looking at. So anyway, anything else? Let's keep going. So that was just, I think, based on one of the comments. It was based on Leia's comments going into Nimzovich, and Ronnie had to leave. Ronnie was asking if we maybe I can gather contact info, lead chess or chess.com, rating levels, etc. Oh, well, that's what we have the International Improvers group, right? Because we're on there. I don't know if we have names connected. Yeah, we probably don't have. You'd have to probably tell them who you are. I can probably probably gather all that. But are we all on are you guys all on that International Improvers group so you can connect with each other and play and stuff?
I think I need a re-invite for that.
You need to what?
I think I need to be re-invited to that. Yeah.
Oh, you have a different username? I didn't kick you out or something. Or someone else
No.
I'm forgetting what kicked you out. The way you changed your username or something?
Let me see if I'm on
Yeah,
Lead Chess.
but
It's on
definitely
Lead Chess, right?
we can get an online tools then. So we have Lead Chess. Definitely the studies on Lead Chess are great. If anything, I recommend Lead Chess to people just for, I mean, I like the fact that it's free, it's open source and all that, and no ads, not trying to use you for profit, like just, you know, it's just nonprofit type of mentality. You know, they both have their place because chess.com does have more resources. But yeah, certainly it has its appeal there. And yeah, they're not going to data mine you and all that. And it seems a little more amicable, I guess, or more amiable. And the studies are great. It has its own flavor. Every single site that has tactics has its own flavor of tactics. This is nice. I think it's the only site that actually pulls tactics from their own users' games, which is pretty cool. So it just uses some program, some code that pulls from players' games and determines where a tactical moment has occurred. And then if it's a bad version, people just vote it down, right? So the ones that get voted up, like, oh, that's a cool version from those games. So leadchess.org for studies. Let's say studies, tactics based on actual users' games. So I guess I'll copy and paste this too for you guys. I mean, this is just going to be in the video. It should be. You guys all see all these words, right? Hopefully, you guys are seeing. I've never used the whiteboard, but yeah, you see the whiteboard, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it should be on the video. But I'll go ahead just so you have a quick reference, because we have this wealth of resources on here that have been compressed. So I'll just share it with you. You could want to pick up that book in case you forgot the name. So studies tactics based on users' games, and a kind of a friendly a friendly open source environment. I'll say that. Okay. Culture. It's a different culture. So I think there are more cheaters. I mean, chess.com is a bigger site, but I do think proportionally there are more cheaters on chess.com. One of my students just faced like an egregious example of cheating. Fortunately, the guy got banned. Like 98% accuracy, ridiculously, ridiculous computer moves. So yeah, there's that. Of course, there's chess.com, and there's Chessable. We mentioned Chess Tempo. Chessable for courses, right? Chess.com has courses too. So chess.com is a great opening filter to look up games you look up players who have played certain games. Lichess has it too. Chess.com you can filter for different things. Also, I will mention 365chess.com. Great opening search. Can see players who used an opening most frequently, which is another filter, and the others don't have, I think. So certain players, not by rating, just who's played it the most. Like, oh, well, cool. This person might be a 2,500, and I wouldn't have noticed them otherwise. But this lower level GM is amazing in this in the Queen's Gambit Accepted. Actually, that's an example. Rublevsky. So Rublevsky's not one of the strongest ever, but he really knew the Queen's Gambit Accepted. So I was able to use him as like a niche right there. So great opening filter on chess.com. They have the videos, huge number of players, variants. You have trainings like end game trainings you can play with the computer. They have the bots. They have all the different kind of fun bots you can play with. Yeah, so chess.com has a ton of resources. It's just that it's freemium and ads. That's the main, and ads. And I have seen it to be glitchy. Glitchy slash muddy, I guess it would go. You're dragging your pieces like it's mud. So muddy slash data, let's say data heavy. This is like, someone described like, it's like I'm dragging my pieces through mud. I mean, it has more data. So Lichess is light. It's light. It's libre. It's free. So Lichess is just a simpler version. It has its benefits. But yeah, so it has its it's freemium. Yeah, but chess.com has a ton of bells and whistles, and most people use chess.com. It's like, some adult I come across freemium, and they're like, oh yeah, so you play on chess.com. Actually, a lot play on Lichess too. Like people that find our class. Yeah, but most people, obviously it's the majority because it's the biggest website. We use chess.com. Yeah, any other things? Any other online resources? Chessable, of course, is super popular. Pretty expensive. If you don't get the video courses, that'll cost you like hundreds of dollars. I wouldn't, unless you really want that thing. But aren't they hundreds of? I mean, they put a lot of work into it. But again, I wouldn't recommend being a passive recipient anyway, and just being spoon fed. So, except for this. But yeah, I think really that I would just engage with the book. Anything else? Yeah, I mean that's pretty comprehensive, I think, because mostly books. Got Lichess, chess.com, 365 chess, Chessable. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people know about 365 chess, but just remember when you filter, you can see the players who played an opening the most, which is super useful. Chessable. I mean, there's Chess 24. That's another big one. Chess 24. There's ICC and a chess club. Those are the main ones, really. I hear Chess 24 is bigger in Latin America. I think it has more Spanish speakers on it. So each one has kind of their niche, right? Any other websites? I think Chessable and chess.com and Lichess are kind of the big ones, right? Again, each one has their benefit. Definitely do the studies. Now, I think, of course, chess.com, they adopt anything that anyone else likes. They just monopolize, they cannibalize it. So then I think they're calling them study. It used to be analysis boards, which again, as I said, I was mentioning they're very glitchy. And pieces would start during the pandemic, at least like 2020. I guess they had such an influx of people. So I'd be showing someone an analysis board, we're looking at something, and then the pieces start randomly doing stuff. So I'm like, it's almost like someone else's moves are like showing up on our board or something. They had some coding issues with that. Maybe they have improved on that. I don't know. But that kind of scared me away from, kind of just deterred me from chess.com. And so I just was like, hey, look, studies, these are great. I've never had any issues on Lichess. Nice and clean programming and everything. So I've been happy with that. And I think you guys use both mostly. Well, you guys all use Lichess, right? You guys prefer one or the other? No, the whole chess.com versus lichess.org debate.
I prefer Lichess because it's cleaner. It's not, well, I think there's less of a possibility of your data being mined. I think they all do it, but it's
Yeah.
a bit less likely, let's say.
Yeah, that's not what they're in it for. Like the kind of .org speaks to it a little bit to the extent that it's pure. But no, it is, but they don't show you ads, right? It is literally
Yes.
lighter. They don't show you ads. So the ping is much less then, right? So you get quicker response. Like that's where your games, you'll be able to play quicker games. If you're playing really quick games, you won't get delayed as much. What else?
I like that the layout is simple. I feel like chess.com is too busy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's just, yes, great for studies, tactics based on users' games, friendly open source culture, nice and clean versus chess.com. Much you said kind of messier. Someone interestingly, someone said to me, I don't know if I mentioned to you, she's a like a web developer, and she said that there's no hierarchy on Lead Chess. I could see that because it's all kind of flat, right? You have to know where things are. Like, oh, I have to look at those 3 lines and click on the 3. But chess.com has weird stuff too. Like you have to press X to flip. On Lead Chess, you press F to flip. Oh yeah, then I was going to say chessgames.com. On chessgames.com, which is a great kind of repository of just games and descriptions of players and stuff. But there you have to press I to flip the board. And on Lead Chess, you actually get to press F to flip the board. So anyway, on chess.com, you have to hover your mouse, or I don't know if they still do this. You have to hover your mouse just to the right of the board, and then suddenly a flip button pops up, and you click. And like, I didn't know you're supposed to press X. How am I supposed to know you press X to flip the board, right? Like, why would you have it be X? So sometimes I like to flip the board, right? So chess.com has weird stuff like that. So chessgames.com, another great resource. Basically look up it's like a Wikipedia. Well, Wikipedia is another resource for it, but it's literally like a Wikipedia page, but for chess. Look up any player, look up a match, games, game collection. So I'll often use that to prepare classes. So I'll be like, let's say I want to look at, I could look at a book or just games I know, but I can also be like, let me look at some games in a particular opening, or let me look at some games that involving double pawns or something. So I say double pawns. I could just Google double pawns chess games collection. And then just make sure you mention collection. A lot of people have already done that. They may have pulled it from a book or just found them themselves. I'm like, oh, great. Here's 20 games. I like these 3. So I'll just use a few games from that and take what I like from it, like anything. It's not like you're plagiarizing. I mean, the games are all out there to be looked at. They're just helping you draw attention to them. I mean, probably most coaches, they just like look at the book and they just use something from the book. And then there's obviously the classic things people show, like famous, like the Opera Box game or whatever, Morphe's Night at the Opera. So obviously there's famous games. So let's say I want to teach one of those. I might be like, oh, let me look up the Immortal games. So it has a list of like 30 Immortal games or something. It's not just the Immortal game. There's like Rubinstein's Immortal that they call it. Like, not everyone probably considers it an Immortal, but there's like Kasparov's Immortal. So anyway, chessgames.com is great. Game collections. So for example, you could say Immortal games, certain themes, opening, famous games from an opening, from the English, etc. Stuff like that, Yes, that's pretty comprehensive. Got almost 2 hours, and I think we covered a lot. Yeah, you guys have any other thoughts? Let's see if I'll just copy this and I'll just like paste it in the email in response in the email, I guess. So you guys have that, and then and I think I have 1 or 2 other videos to post from last week. So we'll keep that going, keep it updated. Any other thoughts about it? I mean, online research, you guys don't have any other thoughts about online resources? I mean, I guess pretty much Chess, chess.com, and Chessable. Obviously, chess.com is monopolizing everything. So pretty much everything you need is on there because they have Chessable. They've bought that, right? So everything's on. Basically, yeah, all these resources are there. And then other than that, it's Chess. So it's pretty much the monopoly of chess.com, and then the one alternative, which is the nonprofit. I think it's a nonprofit, the French-based nonprofit, I think. Or however they do it. It's not like in the US, it might be if they officially get a 501c3. I don't know if they have that official designation, the equivalent in France. I don't know if you guys know about it, but effectively it's it doesn't operate for profit. They have, I think they get pretty generous donations, and so they have what they need. They don't beg you for money like Wikipedia, right? Apparently Wikipedia does need more resources. because it's so vast. But apparently Lichess has what it needs because they're not. Yeah, they're not. I think they said that once that like we don't need more money, from what I recall. But yeah, Wikipedia open, complete open source for everyone, but it does need its resources because they don't advertise, I think, right? So, but yeah, that's a great free resource, but that's about it. Those are the main ones. And then I think that, yeah, ICC, that early in the pandemic, ICC was doing tournaments with US Chess Federation. And I think people don't love that. It's pretty old. That was the big one, that was the big one, like in the 2000s, in the aughts. And then the other ones came, yeah, pretty much 90s, early in the aughts. Then the other ones took over, like chess.com. And then there's obviously, and then all these random other sites were there, like Game Not. And then of course there's ChessBase. Have to mention ChessBase. So ChessBase is a really expensive program, which has all the games of the world, basically the entire database of chess games ever. And it's interesting. When I was in India, I learned about ChessBase India. So apparently they created like a cheaper version that they were able to distribute throughout India. And then they have they got some interesting stuff. So there's ChessBase India, and they have they have a great YouTube channel and stuff. So if you want to follow it, it's pretty fun actually. You learn a lot from. YouTube. So they have a good YouTube channel. But yeah, there's YouTube. So you have all, and then that's fine. We could finish with that, I guess, because that's a whole thing on its own. I mean, look, it's videos, right? It's just a bunch of free videos. And if you do use that, remember you mentioned in the class the ad blocker, which I love now. So if you go on your browser and have an ad blocker, you don't have to watch ads, which is amazing. You don't have to watch now because now they've gone longer and longer. Remember, it used to be like 5, 4, 3, 2, skip. Then it came down to 15. You have to watch. Now some of them you have to watch 30 seconds. So if you have an ad blocker, 0 ads, which is great. And I mean, there's still plenty of people that watch their ads and they'll make money, but you could be one of the few who does not. But you can't do it through the app. You have to be on Chrome or something, or Safari or Firefox or something. So yeah, YouTubers. Any YouTubers you guys want to mention? I mean, I put the videos from here on Chess on the Brain. But then who are the big ones? I mean, there's Agad. I remember Agad was the really big one, and then he kind of, well, then obviously there's Gotham Chess, who he supplanted him. But Agad was one of the big ones, right? From Croatia. What do you guys think?
Agad is just like she's pretty good just for like an overview of master games, but I think for learning, he's not very, especially for a beginner and even intermediate, it's not very helpful. Right. Gotham Chess, I think, skews more towards beginner to intermediate, and then Daniel Naroditsky is definitely intermediate to like international master level because he deals with some high level stuff and his videos are pretty dang long.
Is he accessible though, or not?
Yeah,
only if you're like really strong.
Yeah, following his stuff, it's much higher level. You definitely need to have a basic understanding of a lot of things to really, because he'll go over like the basic stuff pretty quickly, but when he'll go into the more advanced stuff is when he kind of breaks it down. So like you definitely need to know what you're doing watching Daniel Naroditsky. Who else? I mean, there's Hikaru, but he pretty much just streams stuff now. So
yeah, very much helpful. Like streaming bullet games. Now, the thing about Hikaru that I've seen is like I don't want to give a bad name too much in this sense, but I do think that he's one of those masters who just like says, oh, then you go there. At least I've seen stuff like that of his, where it's like, and then you go there, and then I go here, then he goes there, and then go there.
Yeah, he calculates on a different level. Yeah, and you're just like, okay, sure, why not?
Yeah, it's like, okay, that looks cool to watch, but you'll just get something different. It's from his stuff. I think it's more of the entertainment value of streaming. It's like, oh, this is cool. He's like one of the strongest players in the world, and he's amazing at really quick chess. And like, whoa, look at this It's like I'm watching magic before my eyes, right? It's like it looks like he's doing some magic tricks. So yeah, no, but I mean, no, I have seen some. No, I think he's done more descriptions. I have seen some descriptions with some analysis by him that's a little more qualitative. So not to give him a bad name there, but again, I haven't watched it too much. But sometimes I'll like pull it up with my classes in school, be like, oh, here, let's spend 10 minutes. Let's watch this. Let's watch like a live event. Oh, there's like the World Championship. Let's pull it up. Oh, here, Hikaru's streaming. But then obviously you have like, you'll have like chess.com and St. Louis Chess Club, for example. They'll have their streams and everything. How about women? I mean, as for women, yeah, it's like the Botez sisters kind of just seem.
I think they're more. I think they're just
aren't there others that should be up there? You guys think I mean
Eric,
there's a funny
Eric,
one, this Russian
oh,
WGM, and she'll like play, yeah, kind of like trash talking. Well, the Botez sisters do trash talking too. I guess a lot of people like to watch trash talking. What were you
um, I,
thinking?
oh yeah, I forgot Eric Rosen.
Oh yeah, Eric Rosen's good. Yeah,
He's good, but
he
he's
does a
definitely
lot like
for like
opening
the tricky
traps
stuff.
and fun stuff.
Yeah,
And explains what's
tricks.
that?
Definitely for the tricks.
Yeah, like the Elephant Gambit, right?
Yeah,
Botez sisters, what's that? What would you say, Botez sisters? They do like,
do a
you
lot of
know,
streaming now.
they're like millennials who are very
Yeah,
social, or Gen Z. They're very savvy in terms of like one of them did chess boxing. It's like they have really good ways of engaging people.
yeah. I think it's they're more engagement, but I think in terms of just like pure learning, I think and entertainment overall, I think Gotham Chess is probably the top one.
Yeah, I mean he's the biggest one now, beginner, intermediate. Um, yeah, right. You can learn. He's funny, right? He's kind of like, I don't know, he has like kind of dark humor or something like that. He's pretty witty, right? So people
Magnus
like him.
posts stuff on his YouTube channel, but again, I don't think you're going to learn much as an intermediate or beginner from him.
Yeah, but really, no, there should be more women up there. But I think it's
I
let me
think
look
the
it up
Polgar,
actually, because they really should. I mean, the Botez sisters. There's no. I watched someone. I'm blanking out on her name right now. Oh, wait. Oh, I see some on Chessable, but I think what is her name? Let me see this. Let's see. We have, yeah, pretty much the most famous female chess YouTuber would be the Alexandra Botez. They're from Canada, I think, right?
what about
I think they're Canadian.
I
But
think
there's this really funny one. I'd probably pull her up. If I see her a lot, but
oh,
anyway,
Nemo.
she's
Is
Russian.
it is it Nemo or is it Anna Cramley?
Oh yeah. Oh, Cramley, yeah. Wait, who's Cramley? Is like her mom comes on, right? Like she and her mom.
Let's see,
Yeah, I think
Anna,
it's
Yeah,
Cramley.
her
Yeah.
mother and
Chris
father.
Cram.
And then there's this Russian GM, like she'll just like trash talk and stuff.
Oh, I know who she, yeah, she has like orange reddish hair. I can see her face. I just don't remember her
Let me
name. She
see.
was on chess boxing.
Uh,
I forget her name.
Let me see if it shows up.
Have you heard of Coffee Chess?
Coffee chest, no.
Yeah, I think they're in California.
Is it Dina
Yeah, I
Belenkaya?
just saw her. I just saw her. Dina Belenkaya.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she does a lot of trash
But
talk.
yeah, a lot of trash. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. Yeah. I don't know. There's so many. I honestly, I don't really watch chess YouTubers that much, but things will just pop up sometimes. Like, yeah, for example, like Chess Base India, actually, because I watch some of their stuff. So I keep getting like shorts. I keep seeing shorts pop up from Chess Base India. So anyway, Dina, if you want to watch trash talking, Dina Belenkaya. So we have some female YouTubers as well. Dina and streaming. One sec, Jonathan. Cramley, daughter and mother, I think. It's like Swedish or something. And then what
And
was the
fa
other? And then we
the
said,
father
what's her
comes
name?
on
What's her name
sometimes.
again? What's her name again? The Russian
Dina Belenkaya.
Belenkaya.
Yeah, I think that's how you.
Oops, Dina Belenkaya. And then there's Coffee Chess. John, what was that?
A lot of trash talking on there.
Oh yeah, is it good?
Oh,
Uh,
is that Amon and what's his face from
Kalini.
Canada?
Usually at the end
Coffee
of the games, they'll show you a little bit about what the other player should have done to win. You know, things like that.
That's good.
It's a good. Yeah, I enjoy watching that. It's all fun, trash talking.
And then I'll mention, yeah, I mean, it's getting there. I got like, trying to get to 1,000 or 700 something. I'm glad that, yeah, Nikki's like, hey, you should put the stuff. So I started putting in there. So basically our classes are there. I do some other stuff too, like Chess 960. I started messing around with some Spanish, trying to do some Spanglish, little Spanish, little English.
I've
To
been
just,
get,
yeah, I don't know to what extent that'll be useful for people, but if you're trying to learn Spanish or English, man. What's
I've
that?
been getting a lot of videos from this remote chess academy, and
Uh-huh.
he breaks down a lot of the I guess the grandmasters and stuff, a lot of their games.
Oh, that reminds me of this guy,
Remote Chess Academy.
this
Yeah.
guy reminds me of another one, like one of the earlier ones. What is his name? Chess Network. because this guy, he never shows his face, I think, right? He's from like Pennsylvania. He never shows his face. It's just a big board, and he's just like speaking very calmly. But he's a really, he's like a coach in Pennsylvania, I guess, like an NM or something. And he's very very good explaining. Like I looked up, oh, checkmating pattern. So he goes on lead chess. He goes through all the patterns and he explains them all. So it's very good. Great fundamentals, I think. And then what was another one that came to mind? So I know a few of them. Yeah, some of the older ones. Yeah, but I think really Agad Mator, he was the big one before Gotham Chess because he used to be he used to be like the one, a lot like any grown-ups like adults you talk to, like, oh yeah, I know Agad Mator.
He's still
So
really good. I mean,
what's that?
I still like it. I still like his stuff.
Yeah, but he was like kind of like the big what do they call him? Big guy, what do they call it? Big man in town, what do they call him?
Big guy on campus.
Big guy in yeah, exactly. Big guy on campus before. Now the new big guy on campus is Levy, right?
Yeah, Levi or Levi Chess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rosman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So no, I'm impressed how much we covered. You guys had a lot of great stuff. So stuff just comes to mind as you go on. It's like, whoa, we spent a lot of time on chess. We have spent a lot of years doing chess. So many hours accumulated. So things come up. These things come to mind. But yeah, as long as you gain something from it, and don't only do chess. But yeah. So I'll copy and paste this stuff. I'll send you guys an email, and then I'm gonna put up the video. But yeah, lots of good stuff here. So I think, and as I said before, I think you can get overwhelmed, but I would say pick some fundamentals, like for example, like how to reassess your chess. I'd recommend, right? But then be voracious and say like, hey, I'm a voracious reader. I just want to be like, hey, let me try this one. Let me try this one out. And so basically, what I'd recommend is doing some maybe do both at the same time, right? So you'll be like, I have a list of books I want to do, right? So like this summer, for example, like whatever, by the end of the summer, I want to read these 2 books, or I just want to knock down how to reassess your chess. So I'm going to do that by the end of summer. But then I have a training plan, which also consists of doing like, let's say 15 minutes of puzzles a day, 1 game a day. So to be disciplined about it though. It's not just, but the main thing is that you're not just playing games. Because we're just doing puzzles and that's it. Because, if you're doing these things, you're going to take in some really, your mind. I like this quote about like how your mind is a garden to be cultivated, right? Let's cultivate your garden. Don't put junk food in your garden, not only junk food, right? So we're going to get it ready for, get it ready to plant some new stuff in it. And then you will harvest in the fall, right? By the fall, maybe you guys will have read a book and then you play in a tournament or something like that. Or you play and and some people think, oh, I'm never going to be ready for a tournament. Well, you just got to go for it, right? You just, you do the tournaments as you're going because that's where you put everything to the test. Let's say, so you have 1 core book, you have your puzzles, you might have a chessable course. You're going to play, let's say, play some game, but not too much, but let's say you play a few games, maybe a little blitz, maybe one or two 15 plus 10 or a 30-minute game where Ronnie does the 45. I didn't know about that. It's called Lone Wolf on Lead Chess, or on ICC or something. He does some long 45 plus 45s. That's great, so you can do some thinking. So you do some of that and watch a YouTube video, why. But as long as you don't do too, it's like about finding balance. Just don't only watch YouTube videos. Don't only play games. You know what I mean? So as long as you're incorporating, encourage people, and maybe younger people too, if they don't read you, but for everyone really. But yeah, definitely encourage some reading because that's what worked for me in terms of improving in terms of getting some fundamentals down and going beyond that with the supplementals. And then the YouTube videos are fun, but you can watch live events, and you just catch and you just sprinkle it around, right? So like you're reinforcing other things you've learned. And then you just keep rinse and repeat, right? So you guys have any final thoughts about it?
No.
Cool. Well, it's good to have you back, Alejandro. Yeah, it's been a while. Like I guess you come like once every, I don't know, half a year or something like that, whenever you can, right?
Yeah, I'm just gonna try to see if I can do it more because now I'm pretty much done applying to colleges. I got the baby obviously, but hopefully I can spare an hour on the weekend.
Yeah, whenever. Yeah, exactly. You just come for something. We do like 2 hours, but I'll pause it now. But we do like 2 hours, so however much you can make it,
Yeah, when I first moved up here, there was a chess club that I